Hey guys, let me know where you're all from, how long you've been playing the oud. In the chat, let me know, and just enjoy the music. All right. Let me know where you're from, how long you've been playing the oud. Today we're going to talk about taqasim and makams, maqamat. I'm going to take off my effect here. Got an effect on for the oud music. All right, take that off so that doesn't bug you while I'm talking. All right, we're all set here. That was a little improvisation, taqsim in Maqam Nahawand. And we're going to talk about 7 levels of learning a maqam today. And I'm going to show you some examples from all these different levels that we can look at together, kind of explore. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm really excited about this little webinar because I get to talk about things that I really enjoy, and I hope you guys will learn a lot. And yeah, so 7 levels of learning a maqam. And I want to tell you a little background about me. My first music that I learned was Iranian music, Persian traditional music. And so my background, my lens that I look through everything, whether I'm playing or looking at Turkish music, Arabic music, I look at it through the lens of Persian music because that's what I'm most familiar with. So a lot of my influences, my foundation is in Persian music. And so a lot of my improvising that I do is highly influenced by my background. And that's going to be the same for you, whether you're a blues guitar player and you're learning the oud, or a jazz trumpet player. That your background is going to influence you. So keep these things in mind when you hear my taqsim. If you hear something that's unfamiliar, it may be because that's coming from my influences. And so I'm over the years I've tried to absorb some of the nuances of Arabic taqasim, Turkish taqsim, and so my influences are a little bit of a mix. And that is, one of the things that every musician is going to have to deal with and, learn to adapt with as they're developing as a musician. So hello everyone. Thanks for joining me from the United States, Pennsylvania, Australia, New Hampshire. That's great. Let me know how long you've been playing the oud for. It helps to know how long you guys have been playing for, so that I don't if I can provide you with enough background. So please let me know how long you've been playing the oud for. Okay, let's get started. First, I want to go over the 7 levels of learning a maqam, and we'll try to go through this very systematically. So the very first level is learning the notes that you use, the set of values that you use in a maqam. So for example, in maqam Nahawand, we have a certain set of notes that we use in the maqam. Usually it's 7 or 8 notes. Si or do, re, E flat, mi bemol, fa, F, sol, G, la bemol, A flat, and then on the way up usually we use B natural or Si bekar, and then do. On the way down we usually use B flat. So learning the notes is the first level. Now this is very superficial. So for example, you can get a theory book and it can tell you what the maqam is. Okay, it's these notes. But you may not know what to do with those notes. So it doesn't give you the complete picture. It also doesn't tell you the relationship between the notes, because the second level of learning a maqam is going to be learning the jins, or the tetrachords. In Farsi it's called dong. And this is a small set of notes, usually 3 notes, 4 notes, or 5 notes, that has a certain quality, a feeling, a mood. So the set of notes that you use in a maqam, you will you can break them apart, and you can break these apart and identify certain notes, either 3 or 4 notes, that create this quality. So for example, in maqam Nahawand we have jins Nahawand, or tetrachord Nahawand. And these 4 notes have a character. Then above that we have G, and we have a Hijaz tetrachord, or jins, A flat, B natural, C. And sometimes it turns into a chord jins on the way down when we use B flat. So learning these will help you identify the qualities that are there. Then that brings us to the third level. The third level is learning what notes are the most important in the maqam, like the tonic, or in Arabic it's called qarar. In Farsi you'd know it as shahed. And usually the other notes that are important are going to be the end notes in a jins. So for example, so this is the first note, the tonic of Nahawand. So this is kind of like the note that is always in the background. It's like a drone. If you put a drone on this note, do or si, then what you can create an improvisation over this drone, and will sound very consonant, very Then you have other notes in a maqam that are important. The fourth note is sometimes important. And the reason why the fourth note is important is because it is at the end of the jins, the end of the small tetrachord that you have. Now sometimes the fifth note is the end of the jins if you have a 5-note tetrachord. This is sometimes called the dominant in Western music. And there's different terms for it. Every culture kind of has its own terms for these things. So these notes, the fourth and the fifth, are usually where another tetrachord or another jins are going to occur. So for example, so we have this tetrachord. Then the next tetrachord starts on G. So we can divide up the 8 notes of the maqam into these smaller sets, these building blocks, we like to call them. And when you put them together, you create a different color. So for example, let's go to something easy like ajam on do, on C. So for this, what you can do is if you start, let's say on the high octave, you start a different note. Instead of playing E natural, let's say you played E flat. Then you've changed the jins that starts on the tonic. So we have do, C major, and the main jins ajam, which we have in C major, are these 4 notes. That's the quality of these notes. Na 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 na. If you change one of the notes from, let's say, E natural to E flat, then you have a completely different quality. So the mood changes, the feeling changes. And this is very important to learn in, that's the 3rd level. These first 3 levels, you can learn quite a lot about a maqam in these 3 levels. So that kind of covers the important notes. In each maqam, different notes have different importance. And it can get very detailed and very complicated. So let me just answer a question before I continue. Is there equivalent for maqam Nahawand in Persian music? The closest thing we have in Persian music is Avaze Esfahan. It behaves in a similar way to maqam Nahawand. So you have this character here. This E flat, C, D, E flat. But Nahawand and Avaze Esfahan, they differ a little bit in the way that they develop. The melody, of course, and some of the, like Nahawand is quite flexible with the amount of chromatic modulations you can create. And but Esfahan is not so flexible like that. You know, the tetrachord, the focus is on the do. That's the shahed. And then as you go below the shahed, you have to have a quarter flat there, la koron, we call it, and it goes down to sol, but it always comes back up this way. Now in Nahawand, the difference is that you can descend that way with the B flat and do this jins kurd, we call this. So we have half step from sol to la bemol is a half step, then we have a whole step from la bemol to si bemol or B flat, and then we have a whole step from B flat to do. This is jins kurd. So you have different things there, but the feeling of maqam Nahawand and the feeling of Avaze Esfahan are very similar. So that's I would say that would be the most equivalent. Is the timing and the sustain important to the maqam? I'm not sure what you mean about timing and the sustain, so if you could elaborate on that, I'd love to answer. So in the meantime, as you get your questions down, let's talk about the level 4. The next level of learning a maqam is learning the typical melodic development that a maqam has. So this might determine different flows and how the scale progresses, how the melodies are developed. This is also called in Arabic and Turkish sayir. Sayir is very broadly defined as melodic development, but it is very deep and complex, and there's many levels to sayir and melodic development. So it's something like, now I want to give a few examples of this. So I'm going to play for you some tunes, some pieces that are very well known in the Arabic tradition as well as the Turkish tradition. These tunes are samai instrumental pieces that most proficient Arabic musicians know these. They know these. They're part of the repertoire. And I'm going to show the notation. We're going to talk about, this is where sayir comes into importance. So we're going to talk about why sayir is important and what some of the differences is. So you may be familiar with a maqam called maqam Bayati. Starts on D. Of Maqam Bayati, and this is a lot of music is composed on this maqam. So we're going to look at some other maqams which share the same notes, most of the same notes as Maqam Bayati, but they're actually given different names. And this is going to tie into how melodic development is very important when differentiating maqams. All right. So let's look at these. I'm going to show you these on the screen. Okay. Okay, so we have some maqams and pieces that are very well known in the Arabic tradition. The first one, which we know, this is an Egyptian piece, is Samai Bayati by Ibrahim al-Aryan. Okay, I'll play this one for you, and you can see it here. Make sure my screen is good, you guys can see everything. And I'm going to talk about the melody and the development. So listen. So that's the Samai Bayati al-Aryan, very typical Arabic piece, instrumental Samai that everybody knows. And I want to point out to you that the melodies, they start around G. You can see it here. And this is very common when you hear Farid al-Atrash taqsims. You often hear this melody. important in Maqam Bayati. So this is in reference to the melodic development, where the melody starts. And you can see if you it starts at G, develops and keeps going, uses some notes around La and C or A and B, and then eventually goes to the taslim, and the melody ends on the tonic, the beginning of the maqam, which is D. Because whenever you see Maqam Bayati written out on notation, it's always written like this. Let me find it for you. I have a cheat sheet here. You often see it like this, starting on D, E half flat, F, G, A, B flat, C, and D. Okay, so we always write it out that way. Why do we start on D? Because that is the tonic, the beginning of the scale, the backbone, home base of it. But the melodies tend to start around G and focus on G, so that's important. Now listen to another maqam which shares the same notes. Let's go to Maqam Husseini. Maqam Husseini is often played alongside Maqam Bayati in taqsim. Sometimes you'll see taqasim, they'll call it taqsim Bayati Husseini or something like that. Now watch how the melody develops here. Now the difference between Maqam Bayati and Maqam Husseini. Maqam Husseini hangs out around A, the fifth degree, and often uses B quarter flat in the higher tetrachord, and then focuses on A. So you'll have melodies focusing on this note, eventually developing, and then what happens? It changes to B flat and comes down, develops a little bit more, develops, and eventually resolves on D, the bass area. So we have a different melodic pattern, a melodic development here, focusing around the fifth note, so you have melodies that kind of circle around there. And eventually they resolve on the root D. So this is known as a descending and ascending maqam, and this is very important in Turkish music, these kind of things. So let's look at another one. This is Maqam Muhayyer, another really well-known Samai instrumental that's known by many Arabic musicians. And let's look at the melody here. Now again, very similar to both Bayati and Husseini. interesting development here. Now, the reason why it's called maqam Muhayyer is because in old times, this note, the D that we have up here in the higher octave, that was the name of the note. So it starts there. The melodic development begins in the high octave and eventually comes down and resolves on D here, the low octave. So that's why they called it maqam Muhayyer. It's got a different melodic development. So that's what differentiates these. And let's go back to Husseini. The note La that we have on the oud here, this would have been known as the note name would have been Husseini, and that's why this is called Maqam Husseini, because the melodic development starts here. This is very important for the maqam. So these things are very important in Turkish maqam, but in Arabic music, these things are kind of a bit more liberal, and so there's a bit more freedom involved with melodic development and sayir. So you see different things in Arabic music as opposed to Turkish music. Arabic music is a bit more free in the development and changes over time, but in Turkish music, the development seems to be very standard. And so there might be different modulations you'd hear in different maqams. Like for example, now I want to show you finally Samai Ussak. Ussak is another term, another maqam that we have in Turkish music. But this is sometimes lumped in with Bayati. And because it's very difficult, these kind of things have been blurred over time. And as they came into the Arabic tradition, I think, some of the details and the way that they were performed in Turkish tradition kind of got lost or changed, and so this is sometimes, Ussak is sometimes lumped in with Maqam Bayati. But I want to point out what's different about Maqam Bayati and Maqam Ussak. Let's look at this melody now. End of the taslim. So this one, Maqam Ussak, hangs out in the bass area. You can see how the melody develops here, and it doesn't develop the higher tetrachord until later in the taslim, and it then resolves around here. So it starts out here on the oud, and it'll eventually go up, and it'll resolve there. It doesn't start out middle of the scale, It starts out in the home base area around here. So these maqams, all four of them, are based on D traditionally, and because of our instrument, they're based on D. But they have different starting points, and all have the same endpoints. But that's part of the thing. Part of the factor of sayir is the starting point and how the melody develops. Another aspect of the sayir is the type of typical modulations that you're going to encounter in these different maqamat. So that is level 4 of learning a maqam. So another thing is learning what notes are important. We had in level 3. So you got to ask yourself these questions like, what notes are paused on? For example, let's see, in Maqam Bayati, often B flat is paused on. We hear hear that all the time, especially in Arabic tunes like Saluni and Nas, also other tunes. This B flat, you also hear it in Farid al-Atrash taqsim. He'll play like this kind of thing. And then he'll pause on A before coming back to G. He'll come do this kind of thing. So these different notes that are paused on more than others can have some effect on the sayir, the melodic development. So you have to kind of ask yourself these questions when you're listening to a taqsim. What note is this guy hammering on the most, you know? You'll hear it. You got to watch for those kind of things because it gives you clues to how to develop your own taqsim and then what creates the character of this taqsim, of a maqam. Okay, so now I want to go to level 5. Level 5, after you learned these 4 levels, level 5 is learning the common modulations that you hear from time to time in different maqams. So in Arabic practice, for example, in maqam Bayati, we have a few really easy modulations that are you often hear. So for example, this is maqam Bayati, just the scale, and you can easily modulate to maqam Saba. And the reason for this is that you have so many notes in common with maqam Saba and maqam Bayati. The only note that changes is the G, the sol. We no longer play sol on the open string. We play it G flat, or you can call it F sharp, whatever you want to call it. But that's the note that's important that becomes changed. And so this is a very easy modulation. Another easy modulation you hear in maqam Bayati is when we change the tetrachord on sol, on G, and we add a Hijaz tetrachord. This is also known as maqam Bayati Shuri. This is like a modulation. To me, the way I look at it is that this is a modulation. We start out somewhere, and when we change, it's a modulation. So that's how I kind of rationalize it, is that it's a modulation. I'll show that to you again. This is Bayati, Jins Bayati. Then on G, now instead of playing A natural, B flat, C, D, we play A flat and B natural. So for example, in a taqsim, you may hear something like this. So you may hear that change. Sometimes we'll pause on the F and then we'll go and we can change at that point. We change around the G. That's like our pivot point. It's like a junction in the highway that you can turn off. You always turn around on the G note. But you can use F as a helper because it changes the quality and kind of helps the ear, the listener, kind of anticipate or expect that a change is happening. That's what pausing on notes is important for. It helps the expectation change. So those are some examples of typical. You have to learn the typical modulations that occur. And the sixth level of learning a maqam well would be to learn some of the common repertoire. For example, in Maqam Bayati, learn the famous songs that are played in Maqam Bayati, like Noura Ya Noura, Farid Al Atrash's Saluni An Nas, Samai Bayati Al Aryan. These kind of pieces help you create for yourself melodic vocabulary that you can use in your taqsim and in your improvisations. One tip that I have for people is to take a melody you know from a piece and use that as a framework for your improvisation. So for example, let's see here, go to Samai Bayati. Just bring it down here. So we have this melody. I'll bring it up on screen. Okay. So we have here so take that melody and now take it apart. How is it developing? Ask yourself, what's going on? There's a longer pause on G, and then it goes down to D and goes back up to G and then goes down to D. There's a little pause on E, and then you can end up on D. You can elaborate it and create and change it however you want. But you can use that melody that you learned in this piece to help you develop something, create something. So that's a tip that I want you to give a try. Like, take a piece that you know really well in a maqam and then try to take apart the melody yourself. Play it a different way, experiment, have fun with it, and see what kind of things you can create. So now I want to get to the seventh level of learning a maqam. So the seventh level of learning a maqam is to be able to sing a song, sing the maqam. So what this does is, if you're at this level where you can just, okay, sing this maqam for me, sing maqam Nahawand, then you can do it, then you've learned the maqam really well. I can try to do that for you right now, but you have to get into the mode of Nahawand. I gotta choose a note to start on. Let's see. No, la, 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 la. Maqam Nahawand. La, 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 la. La 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 la. So, if I can think of it and get the image of the melody in my head, and I can sing it, then you've pretty much mastered a maqam, or you know it really well, at least. I think I started Nahawand on D because I was playing Bayati in D, so I had that D note in my head. So I was actually playing or singing Maqam Nahawand starting on the D note. So I transposed it in the way that I sang it. That's another location where you could play Maqam Nahawand. The thing that makes Maqam Nahawand as opposed to another maqam is the melodic development. So these kind of things are transposable. They can start on different notes, but it's how they develop and where they start, where they end. That's what makes difference with maqams sometimes, especially in the Turkish tradition. But I don't know how strongly these things are adhered to in Arabic traditional music. It's different in different regions. All right, so that's a little example of 7 levels of learning a maqam. So I want to answer any questions that are coming up. I also want to give you a heads up that the next question is how do you go from level 1 to level 7? And that's an important question. there's many ways to go about it. Like for one, you could go online and memorize all the notes in the in a maqam. But unfortunately, that's only level one. That's only the superficial, aspect of learning a maqam, are the notes. What notes are they, and where do you play it on the oud? You lose the melodic development aspect of it. Then from there, you have to learn the jins and how the jins relate. And how that works is somebody needs to really explain it to you and kind of show you where they go together. You have to look at it. You have to see, okay, here's jins Nahawand, here's jins Kurd. They go together. Where do they go together? What note do they start on? And so forth. Let me give you an example of this. Now, so for example, here, let's see, Maqam Rast, Maqam. So Maqam, let's see here, what we got. Okay, so for example here, this is a good example. Starting out Maqam in a, let's say you want to do a modulation from Ajam on C, and you want to then there's a mistake here, I see. You want to go to Bayati on G. There's a little mistake here I gotta correct. This would be G, and then you'd have A half flat, or B flat, and then you'd have C. So let's say you're doing that. I gotta bring this up on the screen. Okay, here we go. So let's pretend this is G for learning purposes. This is A, this is a mistake, it should be a G here. So Ajam on C, this is one tetrachord, one jins. And then if you add Bayati on G here, you can do a modulation. But you have to do it in such a way that's convincing and sounds good. You have to do it right. I didn't do a very good job there. This is kind of like a theoretical kind of modulation that you can do. So this is an example of what kind of traps you can fall into. What I did here was, instead of going from Maqam Ajam on C, it was easier for me to go into Maqam Ajam on F. Because what I did from Jins Bayati on G, I changed the note to A natural. And then it started to sound like Maqam Ajam on F. So these are the kind of things you have to struggle with and figure out as you're learning how to taqsim, how to do modulation and stuff like that. So it's really hard to get to know these kind of things and to get exposed to all these different levels. But one thing that you can do is, take lessons and learn the repertoire, and then have a teacher help you learn the maqams together. And this process of doing call and answer with your teacher, you can learn all the maqamat this way as well. This is how I learned Persian music. So with my teacher, took private lessons and got myself up to the level where I was playing some songs in the different dastgah that we use, and then start to learn improvisation, do call and answer with your teacher. He starts a melody, you try to copy it. This is kind of like ear training. So that's one thing you can do, and that's one thing that I do with my students, my private lesson students. And another option that you have is to learn it systematically with like an actual learning program. Um, I This month I'm doing a promotion on the Maqam Mastery program, one of my programs which go through all the maqams. Well, not all the maqams, of course, but all the basic maqams. And I want to share with you a little bit about that, how it works, how it goes through it systematically. It may not be for you if most of you are beginners, are only learning the oud for a little while. It might not be the right time for you to learn this, but if you've been learning the oud for like 6 months to a year, this might be something that you'd be interested in. So I want to show you how it kind of works, and I'm adding in some free, limited time free other extra resources, some bonuses this month that will help you learn some other maqams deeper and get you exposed to some of the things that you can do on the oud. So if you want to hear about it, I have another cool video for you that that you can get sent to your email. It's a private video, so it's only for you who sign up for the newsletter. Most of you are probably already on the newsletter, but I want to show you where it is and how to get on the newsletter right away, so that you can learn about the promo and also get a free video where I show you some cool modulations in Maqam Nahawand. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the chat here. Here we go. So sign up if you haven't already signed up for the newsletter. That's where you can sign up for it, and you'll get a link to a video, a private video. This is a video that I made for one of my taqsim students in the step-by-step taqsim program. I thought this video I could reuse it and send it to you guys if you're interested in seeing some of the chromatic modulations that are typically played in Maqam Nahawand. So this is like a completely private video, so sign up for it if you want to check it out, and you'll also get on the newsletter list, and you'll hear about the promo that I'm doing this month on the Maqam Mastery program. So I want to show you a little bit about what's in the Maqam Mastery program, how it works and all that kind of thing. So I'm going to share the screen right now with you. Let's see here. Okay, for some reason it's not working. Alright, one sec. Okay, here we go. Maybe this will work now. Okay, so this is what the Maqam Mastery program looks like on the inside. We have module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And so this is all the maqams that we go through. We focus on the jins. We learn the jins in each maqam, how they work together, and I show you common modulations that you can learn in these. So you can see this this video here is just an introductory video, but if you go to Maqam Ajam 1, you can see it here. This is what the video looks like. This video is 8 minutes long, and we've got ear training also included in the Maqam Mastery program. The ear training is included in the highest tier package. And this is how you can learn how to sing the maqams, so that you get them ingrained in your brain. So this is an important factor that's going to take you to level 7 of learning a maqam. So you can see you have the downloads here, how to use the ear training, audio tracks, these kind of things. And so you can see this video here. Let's go to Maqam Nahawand. So these introduce to you the maqams in a straightforward and systematic way, and how to play them on the oud. This video is 10 minutes long, and it also shows you systematically. This is one of the easiest maqams for Western people because it's like C major, and then Nahawand, and it gets more difficult, and we add the quarter tones as we go. So if you can see here on the side, we go through the maqams from an easy difficulty to a more complicated difficulty. And then we get into some of the maqams that are a little bit more challenging, that where the jins changes in one area of the maqam. And so we can see some of the common modulations more in detail when you go to, for example, module 10. And so these are some of the things you can learn in the Maqam Mastery Program. So this, you can see this video is a very long one, 28 minutes long, because there's a lot of content there that you can work through and get the idea for. Now, this month I want to add in some bonuses. So if you sign up for the newsletter next weekend from the 26th. The 19th of February till the 21st, I'm going to be adding some free bonuses into the Maqam Mastery Program if you enroll in it. And one of them is the Sayyir for Taqsim Rast. Well, these are 3 taqsim that Simon Shaheen has played, and they're published on YouTube. And Simon Shaheen, I think, is a great example of a performer. So I use his taqsims as a taqsim for study, to study his melodic development at that point in time. These things come in and out of fashion, so these things can change over time, and they can change from region to region, and from person to person, from player to player. So I have these 3 bonus things that are going to be included in the Maqam Mastery Program. One of his Rast taqsim, and his taqasim Nahawand, and his taqasim Hijaz Kar Kurd. So you can learn these his sayer for these and some of the examples. And another cool thing that's included in this is a guide. So a guide to that very sayer and that taqsim that he plays. So I show you what this looks like. You get a hint of what it looks like, and so it runs you through how it works and the notes and how they are. Shows you what notes he pauses on and why, and what happens after. So this is Sayyir for Maqam Nahawand that's demonstrated by Simon Shaheen. You can get some of the idea here, and you can follow the tutorial. This is a 20 minute long video of where I guide you through the taqsim and the Sayyir guide. So this is one of the bonuses. And then another bonus that I'm going to be adding is the modulation tool pack. So this is going to have the modulation cheat sheet that I showed you. Where is that? I'll show it to you in a second here. So we've got that here. This is a modulation cheat sheet for Maqam Ajam, Hijaz, Bayati, and Maqam Rast. These are very common maqams that you have, and it'll show you the overlapping jins. So this is something you can print out, and you can use it when you're thinking about doing a taqsim, or you're practicing, or you want to see something visual to help you. Okay, where are the notes, and what notes am I doing? How can I do this better? Or maybe you'll be listening to a taqsim, and you want to kind of see what's going on. These are some guides, some cheat sheets that you can use to follow along. And then I've got another video here, which is I call it the flat note U-turn modulation technique. This is another 20-minute video showing you how you can modulate in a certain way by flattening a note on the oud. So this is good content that I'm going to be adding for free, only for a limited time, on the 19th to the 21st, when you purchase the Maqam Mastery package, only that weekend only. So if you want to hear about that and learn more about maqams, then you can sign up for the newsletter at the link there. And I'm going to answer any of your questions you have in the chat now. So thanks for bearing along with me and listening along. So I'm really happy that you guys joined me here today. Let's see if I can answer some of the questions you got going on here. Okay, let's see. So yeah, your question, timing and sustain, important to the maqam. I mean, when you jump to the shahed, do you wait? Yeah, so there are different notes that you pause on. And these are kind of learned through hearing and repetition, copying through your teacher, or copying a taqsim. You can learn these kind of things. Also, following the Sayer guide that I have in the bonus material can show you what notes are paused on and how they're paused on and what to do after. So these kind of things are important, and they're hard to describe. They have to be done with the instrument in hand, and you have to try it out. You have to copy, and you have to get that. You have to start from a place of copying and then doing it yourself and elaborating on it, being creative. So yeah, there it is important what notes you pause on and how you do it. All right. Okay. How can I train my pinky for quarter notes and trills? That's a good question. Let's see here. So you really just have to start by identifying your fingers. So for example, one thing you can do is if you get in the first position where you have playing C, C sharp with your first finger, D, E flat, and then F, E natural. What you can do is isolate each finger, play like this. Playing very slowly, making sure that your fingers are staying on the string as you go up the notes, and that your finger is practicing stretching. Then what you can do is you go forwards and backwards. Then what you can do is go like this, do repetitions. So you'll see how that will really work out your pinky fingers. Get faster, do it faster and faster. And just keep practicing that, but take breaks, let your hand stretch, and take a rest, get back to it, try it again. You can do it on any note. Another good one is starting on A with your index finger, B flat with second finger, and then C and B, and the fourth finger on C, the closed C position, and then the B flat with your first finger. Just do this. Do it slowly. Practice. That's how you do it. That's one way that you can exercise the pinky finger. All right, next question. Okay. What Persian songs do you know in Maqam Bayati? So in Persian music, we'll have Maqam Bayati is more like Avaze Abu Ata. There's a lot of pieces in Abu Ata and Shur. Pieces off the top of my head. I haven't practiced any in a long time, but there's lots. What can I think of? Let's see. Gosh, I can't think of any pieces off the top of my head that are in Abu Ata. So sorry, I'm blanking out. Alright, makams for me feel like their names, and when I imagine a makam, I imagine the sounds that comes with it and the fingerings before I start practicing. Yeah, listening and playing, yeah, that's great. Keep doing that. So yeah, when it comes to rhythm, that's another topic completely. They work, there's so many rhythms, and so you have to learn a rhythm one by one. You have to learn a song in a particular rhythm, and you have to learn how to count it properly, and it's complicated. There's so many rhythms, but it takes time. I would recommend focusing on one piece in a particular rhythm, learning it really well, and then go to another song which is in the same rhythm, learn that piece, and then learn it really well, and the rhythm will come to you more naturally. When you hear that rhythm next, you'll be able to groove along with it. It's difficult. It is very difficult. You have to get exposed to a lot of repertoire. I myself, I'm not. I don't know all the Arabic rhythms, and my approach to rhythm is very different than Arabic players because of my Persian music background. We look at everything mathematically with numbers, and not so much. We not so much with the names of the rhythm and all this and what emphasis the doom is and where the emphasis of the tek is. We look at everything a bit more mathematically with the number. How many beats are there in a cycle, and so forth. So yeah, I don't know myself all the rhythms. So I'm still learning myself. We are all still kind of learning. Another thing about taqasim is that if you enroll in the Maqam Mastery Program, it's called the Maqam Mastery Program, but you're not going to master all the maqams by going through the material. You're going to have the foundation that makes it possible to master these maqams. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. I myself, I'm always learning. I'm always learning new things. I've got a lot of development that I need to do myself. So I'm in the same boat as you guys when it comes to these things. But there are ways that you can take shortcuts and get ahead. And so that's why, I develop these programs, because I think they're useful to making some breakthroughs. Let's see here. As you play familiar pieces, do you find yourself taking small rhythmic liberties with the phrasings? Yeah, I always do that. You probably heard that when I was playing the samais. So one of the beautiful features of Middle Eastern music is that you can play a piece depending on your mood. You can flatten a note a little bit depending on your mood to some degree. For example, in Maqam Bayati, this B flat, it's not the B flat you're going to find on a piano because it's a bit flatter. You can even sometimes in a taqsim, you can be a little liberal with the pitch, and if you want, you can flatten it a little bit. And sometimes that can create different nuances. So when it comes to melody, you can do some of that to some degree within some boundaries. There are some limitations how much you can do that. And also with elaborating on the melody. So with the rhythm changes that you were talking about. So there's so many ways that you can play a melody. For example, this. You can syncopate it. It becomes something different. You can elaborate, and this is what we do. When you get to an advanced level in music and on the oud, you can do these things, and you can experiment with what works. You can syncopate the rhythm, and you can do all these kind of things that are not like the notes on the page. The notes on the page are in Arabic music, they're just a guide. They only give you half of the story, and that's how they should be used. I myself, when I write music, I try to write all the ornamentations in, but it's not always possible. So yeah, we do take our liberty with the phrasings, but you always gotta stick to there's always a juicy essence of the melody. You have to stick to the essence of the melody within that parameter. All right, can you play a piece called Ilahi Yenaz? I don't know that piece. Yeah, Maqam dashed. We have dashti. I can play you dashti on the Persian version of dashti. I don't really know the Iraqi performance of dashed, how it really works, but I'll play for you a little bit of dashti. It's very very close to Maqam Husseini too, because we stop on the fifth. So this is Avaze Dashti, the Persian style of playing. All right, if there's any more questions, happy to answer. Can I make a request to play Maqam from Dud Va'ud before you leave this live session? What do you mean, Dud Va'ud? Not really sure what you're referring to. If you could elaborate. Can Quran recitations be a good source of learning Maqams? Sure, why not? Avaze Abu Atta Khili. Okay, I'll read that later. Let's see here. Okay. All right. If there's no more questions, that's all the time that I have. I hope you'll sign up for the newsletter. So if you're not already on it, and I hope that you like this video, please like and subscribe as usual. And I'm gonna put the link again for the newsletter here, so you can get another free video. Here it is, and I will also put it in the description. Oh yeah, I also want to mention if you are interested in taking Oud learning seriously, please check out my my Oud lessons page. I'll show you what it's all about. You can check out everything out there. I'll show it to you 1 second. Where did it go? Here it is. Okay, you can check out my Oud lessons here on this page. Right now, I still have some time slots left. If you're serious about learning Oud and going deeper, maybe you want to kind of brush up on your skills, maybe learn some specific repertoire in specific makams, or even if you just want to learn how to improvise and improvise in style that that I can teach. And develop melodies, practice this. We can do like call and answer kind of thing in our lessons, and develop this practice of calling and answer. This will train your ears to help you copy the melodies that I show you. There's no limit to what melodies you can really create, and so you can learn a lot just by doing this call and answer thing. This is kind of the old school. This is kind of the old school method of learning, and I do teach that with some of my students, especially when they're at the level that they can kind of learn these things. But you may not be there yet, but if you're interested in taking a lesson here and there or doing something regular, you have my lessons link, so you can check that out. Hussein, I'm not so quick at reading Farsi, unfortunately. I grew up in Canada. I've never set foot in Iran, unfortunately. I learned all the music outside of Iran, and I grew up around Iranian family, Iranian community in Canada. So, I'm very close to Iran, but unfortunately, I've never been there. I've never been there yet. I didn't go to school to learn Farsi. I learned it all myself. So I'm a little slow, but the thing I know the most about Iran is the music. I grew up listening to the music, and that's really my identity, is really joined in with Musiqi Irani. So I can't read your messages very quickly. I'm like a third grader when it comes to reading Farsi, so bear with me. So I don't. So I play a piece from Do the Oud. Do the Oud. That's one of my favorite CDs. I don't know. I don't know the all the music all the way through. But I really love the tasnif. Now that album is all in dastgah nava. So dastgah nava is really interesting too because um, it ends on the G. That's the home base. Similar to Maqam Bayati sometimes, but it's very different the way that we develop melody. Let me think if I can. I can't remember the piece now, but yeah, I really love that album. Do the Oud. It's one of my favorites. But I've never really practiced seriously any of the songs on Oud, unfortunately. So yeah, anyway, that's all the time for me. I gotta go have lunch now. Thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you'll check out the free video that I have when you sign up for the newsletter. Do check it out, and let me know if you have any questions anytime by email. I'm always happy to answer any questions, and have a good one. All right, see you guys. Bye.